Well, good evening. Am I on? I think it's on. All right. Just get some stuff laid out here. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you tonight. As they just told you, Man and I do teach middle school Sunday school, and it is hectic at times. We've still got all our hair. I don't have that much gray yet. But I'm also a deacon at one of our sister Baptist churches. Y'all will meet my pastor actually in a week or two because he's coming on September 11th to share with you guys. So y'all will get to see another Crawfordite come through. But with Renee and Elton being here, part of your congregation, and truly I am blessed. I got lucky to marry into this family. I love them very much. They have been nothing but supportive of me and encouraged me, even so much so that I did some piano recitals, as some of you may remember me from that. I love them that much. So I will say that probably because of that, you know a little bit about Amanda and I. But one thing I could tell you tonight that you probably don't know is that for the last 10 years, I've been going to places just like this, and I've been sharing a story, my testimony. And if you're in this room tonight and you're a Christian, then you have a story, a point in your life where you met Jesus and you're forever changed. Pastor Jay, when he comes, he may say this. I want y'all to be ready. He always likes to say, nobody meets Jesus and stays the same. They don't. He's right. I will tell you that I never imagined myself in a position to do what I'm going to do tonight. I never dreamed on doing this. I never planned on doing this. If you'd have told me I'd be doing this 15 years ago, I would have laughed directly in your face. But I'm here to tell you tonight that our plans do not always line up what God has planned for us. And I will tell you that His plan for our lives is sovereign. You may be in here tonight. You may have no idea why you came. But I'm here to tell you it's for a reason. If you're in this room tonight and you're hurting, you're feeling broken, he mentioned the sick. If you feel alone, I'm telling you tonight that you came to the right place because the church itself is a refuge for the broken. And the name Emmanuel means God with us. Therefore, we are never alone. Not you, not me, not ever. And I keep a bookmark in my Bible as a reminder of just that we're not alone. And you probably can't see this. It's just a picture. It's a picture of two kids and they're riding a carousel. And we all know what a carousel does. They're on the same horse. It goes up and down and around, up and down while spinning. We call it a merry-go-round. And that reminds me that God is with us because every day this world keeps on turning, doesn't it? But God continues to be with us through our own ups and downs, through our own peaks and valleys. He continues to be with us. Guys, God did not promise us that this life was going to be easy. He did not guarantee us that this life would be pain-free either. But He did promise to be with us. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a God that keeps His promises. Let me pray one more time. Dear God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for an opportunity just to be among your people, God. A people group that a lot of these people, and I care about them. I love them, God. I just ask that tonight that you would open ears, you would open eyes, and you would soften hearts, God. I pray that you would move in a mighty way, God. You would take this story, this testimony, God, and you would just speak to the hearts of your people, God. I just ask these things in Christ's name. Amen. All right, so many of you know some things about me. I want to go back to where my story starts. It's really a God story. 10 years ago, the year's 2008, he told you I'm a nurse. I'm finishing my first semester in nursing school, and I was playing baseball at the time at the University of Mobile, and a good friend of mine calls me up, and he says, hey, man, my fiance and I have set a wedding date, and we want you to be in the wedding. And I said, sure. Been friends with this man since I was 5 years old. So I said, sure. And I said, when are you getting married? He said, March 15th. And I thought, oh, my goodness, it's right in the middle of baseball season. I was a second baseman. I was a 4-year starter at the University of Mobile. I didn't get days off. Pitchers could throw, and then they got a week off. You didn't get to do that when you were a position player. I thought, there's no way in the world I'm going to get to miss a doubleheader to be in a wedding. But as I looked towards our schedule, and I flipped towards that upcoming schedule, it happened to be the only Saturday, March 15th, that we didn't have a conference game. So I said, I've never heard of it happening before, but maybe it will. I finally worked up enough courage to go in there and ask my coach. I said, Coach Jacobs, I need to miss a game so I can be in a wedding. And he turned around, whipped around his chair, and said, Jared, as he often did, I'm going to pray about it. Now, I'm thinking, okay, you're going to pray. But if you knew Mike Jacobs, This is not an uncommon answer for him. He was a coach that every year, I played for him for 4 years, he gathered his team up the first day of practice, and he said, I don't care who you are, where you're from, while you're on my team, you will be introduced to the gospel. We went to church once a month as a team for 4 straight years. So this is a typical answer from Coach Jacobs. I said, okay, you're going to pray. And I left it at that. I leave that office, and days went by, days turned into weeks, and my friend is hounding me. Man, I need an answer. You got to get fitted. You got to do this. You got to do that. So I say, okay, Coach, I need an answer one way or another. You prayed about it. You considered it. What's your answer? And he asked me, he said, are you really that good of friends? I thought about it for a second, and I said, well, yeah, I think we are. You know, I've been friends with this man since I was 5 years old, and I may or may not have taken a dance class last semester so his fiance would have a partner. We're that good of friends. I said, I feel like it's something that I need to do. He said, okay. So originally, for the day of this wedding, his plan was, we had a doubleheader against a team called McKendree University. And the plan was I wasn't going to play second that day. I was just going to DH. I was going to be the designated hitter. He said, so that way you get a couple of bats and I can pull you when you get ready to leave. I said, okay. That was the plan. We played the same team that Friday before, and I'm guessing he was in a good mood. We put a good whipping on this team. We're walking up out of the stadium there to leave, and I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, you know, Coach, what time should I tell them to expect me? They want to wait on me to take pictures. What time should I tell them? He said, turns around and says, you know what, Jared? Just don't even show up. Don't come. Go, have fun. We'll see you on Monday. I said, I don't have to come. He said, nope, go. We'll see you on Monday. So I said, okay. That was it. That was all I needed. And we had a great day. I got to be with all my old friends, and we had a blast. Anyway, after the wedding, a week goes by. My friend gets back from his honeymoon. He calls me up. He said, man, I'm going to be coming home from work tomorrow. I want to stop by and catch some of your game. And I said, okay, sure. We were playing a team out of Mississippi, actually, and some of you may be familiar with Belhaven College. They were in town to play a set with us, and it was a Tuesday or Wednesday game. And if you've ever been out to the University of Mobile, some of you maybe you have, but our field kind of sat like in a gully. So if I'm playing second base, everybody that drives up, I can see them out of the left side of my periphery here. And the first game goes by, and I never saw him. And we get on into the second game, and it's about the 4th or 5th inning, and I see his truck finally pull up. And he walks down the hill there and sits kind of right behind my dad in the top right-hand corner of the bleachers. He sits down, and I'm coming up to bat, I think second this next inning, 4th or 5th inning, and the very first pitch I see, boom, got it, knew it was gone. It's one of those you don't feel it all in your hands. I set my bat down. I remember rounding third, shaking Coach's hand. I remember getting to home plate and hugging my teammates. And I look up there in the bleachers, and my friend does this. Stands up, claps, turns around and leaves. So, okay, I was hoping to get to talk to you, but he was there about 4 minutes is the way I got it calculated. Thanks for showing up, buddy. But I tell you that because of this. Nobody scored after that home run right there. That ended up being a game-winning home run in that 4th or 5th inning that day. And like I said, I played over 200 games out there at the University of Mobile and hundreds before that. And if you play a game long enough, you had a lot of good memories, right? A lot of fun memories, a lot of just guy time and just a lot of good memories. But that memory right there happens to be my most vivid, my most special memory that I have in my entire career as a ball player. And it's not because that was a home run or because it ended up being a game winner. It's because of this. That day when my friend stood up in those bleachers and he clapped and he turned around and left, it was the last time that I ever saw him alive on this earth. His name was Justin Betzel, and he was killed about 2 months later in a car accident with his brother-in-law coming home from work. And I was devastated. I have thought back on that moment many times in my life over the last 10 years of what would have happened in that moment if I had struck out looking and had to turn and take the long, lonely walk down the dugout steps. Would I have gotten more time with my friend? Would he have stayed? Or did he see enough? How could it get any better than one pitch, one homer? Had he seen enough? I've wondered that many times, and I'm grateful and I'm thankful that that's not necessarily a question I need answered, but it is a question that I've asked if it would have given me more time. Now, I can remember sitting at his funeral weeks later, and I was sitting on the left side, just like over here, and I had my head down on my lap. I was crushed. I was absolutely devastated. And all of a sudden, music started to play. And out of the corner of my eye, I see 4 people stand up at that funeral. And it was his mom, his dad, his sister, and his wife. And they stood up in that church, and they raised their hands to God, thankful for the time that they had with him. And here I am feeling sorry for myself. They lost far more than I could have ever lost. I lost a very, very dear friend, but they lost a husband, they lost a brother, they lost a son, and for his parents, he was their only son. That was the end of a name. You dads with boys, your name means something to you, doesn't it? And then I began to think, what kind of love is this to where you can be thankful in a time of loss like this? You see, shortly after this, our senior class at Mary G. Montgomery High School contacted me. They wanted to have a memorial service for him at the high school. And they asked me to come and speak on his behalf. Guys, one of the first classes I ever took at the University of Mobile as a freshman was public speaking. But I never imagined in all my life that the first speech I would give outside of a college would be a eulogy. But it was. And the one after that became this testimony. And the one after that became a sermon. But I never imagined that that would be me. And I don't remember anything about what I said that day, but I'll tell you what I do remember. When I stepped off that stage at that high school auditorium, a man grabs me by the hand. It's a man by the name of Gary West. He was Justin's father-in-law. He shook my hand, he looked me in my eye, and he said, he would want you there, Jared. He would want you in heaven with him. And I didn't really know the guy that well. It was kind of awkward. But what was starting to happen, he said enough to me to make it stick in my mind. God was starting to talk to me for the first time in a long time. Now, I wanted to forget about it. When people say something to you that steps on your toes a little bit, gets you feeling uncomfortable, what do we want to do? We want to forget about it. I was no different. I wanted to do what I always did. I wanted to put my head down. I wanted to hit the books, hit the weights, and hit the balls. That was my routine. I was taking a summer class at that time, and in nursing school, all your books have human bodies in it. But I will tell you, I could not study. I opened that book to study, and every body in that book, I saw Justin's face on every one of those people. I had to go to my teachers as a 21-year-old man and say, crying, you can fail me or you can extend me, but I can't study. I miss my friend. And I'm so grateful this day to the University of Mobile for their leniency with me during that time and encouraging me during that time because they extended me and gave me an opportunity to continue my education that summer. But that's tough to admit that you can't do something as a man, and I couldn't do it. As foggy as those words were in that book, the only book I could see in focus was this one. Imagine that. Now, I was having very, very much trouble sleeping during this time in my life. Weeks turned into months. And one night I had a dream. And I dreamed I was back in that auditorium giving that eulogy again. And Gary West had me by the hand saying those same words to me. Jared, he would want you there. He would want you in heaven with him. It's that when I looked around that auditorium, it was completely empty. I woke up, as you can imagine, scared out of my mind. My heart was racing. I was sweating. Little did I know that being scared was a step in the right direction. Proverbs 1:7 says this, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Guys, when Vincent van Gogh was once asked about one of his famous paintings, he said, look, first I dream my painting, then I paint my dream. Guys, God was wanting me to do something. Jared, I'm ready to give you a blank canvas. I will wipe it clean if you're ready to follow me finally. So that night on my bedroom floor, I was hurt. I was tired. I was absolutely broken. I got down on my hands and knees, and I found no rest that night. I found no comfort, but I found hope that night because the Savior of the universe found me. And I've never been the same. And I began to think on all the times that I share with my friend. And one story in particular I'd just like to share. A few months before he was killed, he and I were sitting watching TV at my mom's house, and we heard a loud banging outside. And he was a tough guy. He pops up out of that chair and said, man, we got to go see what that is. I said, no, we don't. It's dark. And he said, no, man, your mom's back there. She's asleep. I said, I know. I want her to stay that way. Have you met the lady? But I let him talk me into opening that back door, and he darts out around the house as just as fast as he could go, and I stood there like this, holding down the fort. Finally, he comes back around in, and he says, oh, it's nothing, man, just something knocked over your mom's trash can. She had these huge tin metal trash cans, and they made a ton of racket. But the point I'm trying to make here is that he was ready. If somebody would have been out there that night, wanted to rob us, hurt us, shoot us, whatever, he was prepared that night to meet his maker. And I wasn't. I was still holding on to things in this life. In that situation, it was a door frame I have held on to a lot worse. So then I asked the question that maybe many of you have asked. Why him? Why do bad things seem to happen to the good people? Somebody who could have made a difference. Why not a rapist? Why not a murderer? Why not a drug dealer? Somebody who is offering nothing productive to the world. Why not one of them, God? Justin Bedsoe was far more than a football player, and his number 17 Mary G. Montgomery football jersey still hangs in that high school as a reminder to kids. Far more than that. It doesn't do him justice, I've always said. He was an outfielder. He was voted most handsome. He was the lead in the school play. He was in the National Honor Society, and he was a 2-time lip sync champion with your boy. He was my sidekick, my brother from another mother, my best friend. He was the best of us. So why him? Why somebody that truly could have made a difference in this world? I find my answer in Isaiah 57:1. It says this, that the righteous perish, and no one ponders in his heart that devout men are taken away to be spared from evil. As he was spared from this world. Guys, that was 10 years ago. I think we all can agree that this world is a scarier place to be today than it was a decade ago. Parents, do you worry when you put your kids on the bus? Retired folks, is it sickening when you turn on the news? Yeah, this world is a scary place to be. And if we can all agree on that, then that ought to stir up some kind of emotion out of everybody in this room. Whether you're a Christian or you're not a Christian, that ought to stir up something in you right now. Let me tell you why. Look, if you're not a Christian and you just agree with me that this world is a scary place, yeah, I did not drive over here to sugarcoat anything, but this world, this scary world is as good as it's ever going to get for you. If you don't know Jesus Christ, you have hit your pinnacle, you have climaxed, you have hit the peak of your life if you don't know him. And for Christians in this room, that ought to light a fire underneath to not let one opportunity go to waste, to not let one conversation go to waste. Not a friend, not a coworker, not an acquaintance. It should light a fire under us knowing of how sick and how far this world has fallen. You see, it ought to stir up some kind of feelings in everybody in this room. And during this time in my life as a 21-year-old kid, I had a lot of feelings, as you can imagine, stirring up inside of me. And one of the most prevalent ones was guilt. Anybody here felt guilty? Probably everybody. You see, the reason that we feel guilt is because you and I were made in the image of something better, created in the image of God. You see, the night Justin was killed, I was at a bowling alley, and I had been drinking all night long. I could have stopped. I could have sobered up. But I didn't. I ordered another pitcher, and I drank all that, and I drove home. And I should have known better. I had enough evidence in my life to know better. I had an aunt killed by a drunk driver. My grandfather was hit by 2 girls who were high and had his neck broken. I had enough evidence in my life as a 21-year-old man that I should have known better. But I didn't. I did it. I was drinking and driving the night my best friend was killed, and I'm the one who made it home. That's a decision that I made that I got to live with every single day of my life. But as I told you earlier, our plans do not always line up what God has planned for us. Yes, I deserved to die that night. God did not give me death. God's plan is sovereign. I got that phone call that he had been killed about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was still drunk. And I cried till the sun came up. About 6 o'clock that morning, I felt like I was sober enough to where I could drive home. And I got in my vehicle and I drove over to his parents' house, and there were already cars everywhere, as you can imagine. And his parents greeted me at the door. And you want to know the first thing out of their mouths? They said, "Jared, he was so proud of you. He was so proud of you." That's the first thing they said to me. Why? What was he proud of? Because I could hit a ball? He should have been ashamed of me. God knows I was. I was destroying my life by trying to find pleasure in evil things. And the word that comes to mind is selfish. I was absolutely 100% selfish. I got behind the wheel of my car that night with regard to how it would affect my friends, my family if something were to happen to me, not to mention the countless people that I passed going home that night. Maybe some of you have made that selfish decision in your life. Maybe this week. Maybe last night. And you can try to justify it just like I did all you want to and say, "Oh man, things just been tough on me lately. My life's been kind of hectic right now." So what? Life gets hard. It's not an excuse. Martin Luther King said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that." Proverbs 24:10 takes that a step further and says this: "If you falter in times of trouble, how small is your strength?" Guys, we cannot give in to those things during the difficult moments in our life, because if we do, we will end up just like those bottles that we're drinking out of. We will be absolutely empty. So here I was, a 21-year-old kid, thinking I'm invincible. I had no idea how weak and truly empty that I was. And I was coming off one of the best years of my life statistically, and I was rewarded for it. Earlier that month of May, I had been named Conference Player of the Year. A few months later, my name was in Baseball America, the magazine. All these things that I had worked for my whole life, things were starting to happen. But can I be honest with you? Those plaques are covered in dust. Those frames, they're going to break one day. What good is it for man to gain the whole world and yet forfeit his very soul? Now, parents, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with winning awards and having accolades and all this stuff. This shows that they worked hard for something. It's something to be proud of, and they deserve it. But I'm telling you to be leery of the things that feed your egos, that cannot and will not ever feed your soul. Because I was absolutely empty. I had everybody fooled. My teachers were cutting newspaper articles out and putting them in the nursing building. They said, man, this guy's having success on the ball field and in classroom. This guy can do it all. Nope. I was a mess. I would go home and sit in my bedroom, and the quiet of that room had never seemed more loud. The silence was deafening. Anybody in here ever heard an echo? An echo is defined like this: the persistence of sound after the source has stopped. And if you look it up, some common places where you'll hear an echo are from the bottom of a well or from the walls of an enclosed room. When I would sit in my bedroom, I felt like I was drowning at the bottom of a well, and I felt like those walls could just cave in around me and I wouldn't care. But let me tell you what, my friend's life had an echo, and I remembered who he chose to live his life for. And that echo became his legacy. It's been said before that legacies are built one memory at a time. And I could stand up here for 2 nights straight and talk about all the memories that I have with my friend. I really could. I got 16 wonderful years with him of being friends. But one I just want to mention with you right now about the impact that he had on my life. I told you that jersey of his still hangs at Mary G. Montgomery. I got to go down on the field and be a part of that jersey ceremony. And they had 3 jerseys framed that day on that football field. One went to his wife, one went to his parents, and one still hangs at the school to this day. And up to that point in my college career, I had always worn number 6. That was my number. And as I unveiled that jersey that day and I flipped that curtain over and I looked at that number, 17, I thought about it. 17, 1 and 7. What's the difference in those numbers? 6. It was me. He made a difference in my life, and for the last 10 years, I have been going to places just like this one to tell people about the difference that was in his, and his name is Jesus. I could talk again for days about all the people I began to meet as I began to share this story at 21 years old, and I went to night services and day services and ball fields and locker rooms, and I could talk to you all night about all the people that I met and how it was all connected. I could really write a book. But one person in particular I want to talk about tonight that I met during this time as I began to go and share about grief was a young lady who had been struggling with grief for almost 2 years. You see, she had lost her high school sweetheart in a car accident very similar to my friend's. It was the man she had planned to marry. She had felt like she had been robbed of her future, like it had been just taken right from underneath her feet. And the sting of that man's death was driving her life. And at this point in my life, I had a lot of things driving my life. I don't have time to name them all, but anything that we put before God is an idol, and I had a lot of them. And I really thought that it would be hard to overcome these things. But let me tell you what God can do. God can give us strength in our weakest moments. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says this, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Wow. That's amazing to me that no matter what you're going through, he's trying to put it back together. Dustin mentioned he's working all things for good. If you're broken, he's putting the pieces back together. If you're hurting, he's trying to heal. God knows you, he loves you, and he understands. People forget God, Jesus, was fully man and fully God. He understands what we go through as people. Now, many of you sit there and say, there ain't no way Jesus understands me. He doesn't understand. My husband left me. My wife betrayed me. He doesn't get that. Guys, Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. He understands betrayal. He gets it. And you may sit here and say, well, I'm an addict. I can't get off this website. I can't quit doing meth. He doesn't understand the temptation I feel. Jesus fasted for 40 days, and he was taken up by the master of all temptation. He's a God who understands temptation, people. And I won't sit here tonight and say, God, my friend died. He's gone. You don't understand how I feel. I won't say that because if you look it up, when Lazarus dies and they take Jesus to where he is, you know what he does? He wept. That's exactly right. He cries. He's a God who understands. Now, we all know what happened to Lazarus. We all know he helped him overcome that death. And when death came for Jesus, we know he conquered it. That tomb is empty. Do we need to go there? It is nothing more than an empty hole right now. And that's what all these things have created in your life and my life are holes. Whether it be death, disease, drugs, divorce, they've created holes. And I'm here to tell you tonight that Jesus Christ is big enough to fill every last one of them. He is enough for you and he is enough for me. After all this happened, I had somebody come up to me and they said, you know what, if all that happened to me, I'd probably straighten my life out too. That still hurts to read that. Let me just make it pretty clear. I stood on stage, one just like this one, with my best friend as he said his vows and he got married. And 2.5 months later, we carried him off that same stage and we put him in the back of a hearse. It's not something you want to do. It should not take a car accident or someone being cancer before we know what we do is right by God. I am utterly ashamed that that's what it took to get me here. But nonetheless, I am here, and I'm begging you not to make the same mistakes that I did. I eventually had to quit asking God why it happened or if I was being punished. Because the fact of the matter is, Justin Betzel and his brother-in-law, Alan West, were two young men that were on fire for God. And I was not being punished. These two men were rewarded. Revelation 22:12 says, behold, I am coming soon. My reward is with me, and I will give to everyone according to what he has done. So let me ask you tonight, what are you doing? What are you doing with the things God has blessed you with the gifts you've been given, with the time you've been given? What are you doing with it? And don't sit here tonight and say, you didn't give me nothing. That's not true, and you know it's not true. God has given everybody in this room some sort of gift. And there's gifts that we all can have. You know, you got love, you got patience, honesty. Some of you feel like God has overlooked you because you can't do certain things, because you can't play the piano great like my mother-in-law can, or you can't dunk a basketball, you can't throw a baseball 95 miles an hour. So what? I would say that those things are just a gift of talent, and I will tell you that talent is a common gift, and it gets wasted every single day. Romans 11:29 says, for God's gift and his call are irrevocable. That means what he has given to you, nobody can take that away from you unless he ordains it. So why waste it? Why sit on it? One gift that God gave to everybody in this building tonight that I'm looking at is life. Guys, I hope you don't waste your talents, but let me beg you and urge you not to waste your life. Pastor Levi Lusko of Fresh Life Church once said this. He said, it is possible to have a saved soul and yet have a wasted life. Wow. Is that you tonight? There may be people here that's been saved 20 years and your mission and your ministry have never got outside these four walls. What are we doing? We're called to more than that. Do not waste your lives. Don't look back and wonder 20 years down the road if you did everything you could have, if you accomplished everything that you were supposed to for the kingdom. Because there are things you can do right now in this moment that you can't do a second after you're gone. Text you can send. Phone call you could make, a door you could knock on. Coach used to tell us all the time that he was preparing us for life. He said, good teammates are going to be good employees. Good teammates are going to be good fathers. Good teammates are going to be good husbands. Guys, that was an understatement. I had no idea what type of life was being prepared for me. But I will tell you one thing that I do not believe in and that we don't say at our house is the word coincidence. I don't think there is any such thing. You may be in here tonight and you may have no idea why you came tonight. Believe me, I'm with you. At times I have no idea why I do some of the things I do. I can't tell you a reason, but I know how I got here. I got here because Jesus Christ, the Good Shepherd, never stopped pursuing me. When I was finally done running, he was waiting. Understand that I was running and rebelling to rescued and redeemed. The Bible tells us that he will leave the 99 and go after the one that is lost until he finds it. Those are 4 pretty powerful words. Until he finds it. That's the type of God that we serve. One that never stops pursuing us. And I am so grateful to be standing here today before a God who doesn't stop pursuing us and never stopped pursuing me. Because I'll be honest with you, there were a lot of days in my life that I could have cared less if he ever found me. The day we had to carry Justin out of that church was one of those days. I could have cared less if anybody ever found me. It was the hardest day of my life. But I think my family and friends would agree that he has helped carry us ever since. Guys, those types of friendships that he and I had, those types of relationships can transform lives because of the memories that go along with it. Earlier tonight, I showed you a picture of 2 kids riding a carousel. That was us. We were 5 years old. Why we're riding the same horse, I don't know. But our friendship started in that picture. And the great thing about that picture is we're not looking around. We're not looking ahead of us. We're not looking behind us. We're just looking everywhere. We're soaking it all up. We're taking it all in. At that moment right there, in kindergarten, nothing else seemed to matter. But guys, we had no idea what was coming. We didn't have a clue. But it is not coincidence that he's riding on the front and I'm riding on the back, because he would go before me in life and in death. But I have done my best to ride in his stead and to ride in such a way as to point people to our Savior, Jesus Christ, in heaven, because someone once told me a long time ago that he would want me there. Ecclesiastes 4:10-12 says, if one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. That is a cord that not even death can sever. I'm thankful every day of my life for that friendship. And for another thing, I'm thankful for prayer. Then I heard this morning in a sermon that prayer is likely the most powerful gift that God gives us. And I agree with that. I'm thankful to have played for a coach who was a praying man. If Coach Jacobs doesn't pray that prayer, I am not standing here today. The Bible tells us to pray about everything, to pray without ceasing. Even if one day your second baseman comes to you and he says, I need to miss this game to be in a wedding, he tells you to pray about that. If he doesn't say that prayer, I probably never play again. I resent him. I resent the game. I walk away from it all. But because I had a faithful coach, that prayer changed lives. That prayer turned me from a skeptic into a believer. And that prayer changed the coach from a mentor to a friend. And I could tell you about countless other lives that prayer has touched. And one in particular, the young lady I told you about earlier who had lost her high school sweetheart. I actually got to see her eventually pick up those pieces, those broken pieces of her shattered heart, and give them back to God. And in October of 2011, I had the pleasure of attending her wedding, and so did some of the people in this room. You want to know why? Because I ended up being the one standing beside her. She is my most precious gift. She's my companion. And there are many times when we had to cling to these days I'm telling you about. When there's too much month at the end of the money, when we argue, everything seems to be chaotic. We have to cling to these days and realize that a lot of things happen so that she and I could be together. The very last time I ever Justin on this earth, we were having a phone conversation. And something happened in that conversation. His wife beeped in. He clicks back over and he said, Jared, that's Leslie. I got to let you go, man. And he said 3 words to me, and I've never forgot them. And they're not the 3 that you're thinking. It's the last 3 words I've ever heard him say in my life. He didn't say, I love you. He didn't say, see you later. He said, marriage is work. And he hung up. Those are the last 3 words he ever said to me. But how beautiful is that he was preparing me to meet my bride before I ever met her. And I would meet her because of his life and his story that I began to share shortly after his death. Those are the reminders that God has for us. Those are the things at times that carry Amanda and I through. And I don't take our story for granted for a second, which is the reason I continue to go and share it. But that does not mean that it's been easy for us. There are days when I still miss my friend tremendously. There are days when I had patients and they ask me where I went to high school and they say, "Did you know that quarterback boy?" Some days I have enough strength to say, yeah. Some days it hurts too bad to even talk about. There are days when I still miss my friend tremendously and I wish he was here. There are days when I still look for and I need to be comforted. And if you've ever lost anybody that is in Christ, I will tell you where comfort is found in the Bible. And it's found in 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17. For it says this, "For the Lord himself will come from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds and to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will be with the Lord forever." Guys, I cherish the times that I had with Justin. I loved him. But I don't have to cling to those days anymore because I'm going to see my friend again. I'm going to have more. And so will you. You don't have to hold on to that anymore. Some of you may be in here tonight. You may be holding on to things right now that are going to take you down a road you do not want to go down. Let me urge you to let it go. Understand this about this life that we live. This life is precious, without a doubt. But this life is just a fraction of the time that we have in the scheme of eternity. It's just a piece. But you and I have to get this piece right. One bad choice can change your life forever. But because of what Jesus has accomplished on the cross, so can one good one. And I told you earlier that God continues to pursue his people. But let me just remind you that just as steadily as God is pursuing his people, something else is too. The enemy also pursues you and I fervently. The enemy is prowling. 1 Peter 5, 8, 9 says this. It says, "Be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kind of suffering," guys. I told you earlier that being a Christian does not guarantee us an easy life. God did not promise us one either. Suffering is inevitable. And my life after this accident at times has been no different. In Christmas 2014, Amanda and I shared with close friends and family that we were expecting our first child, and we were excited. The very next day, our oldest nephew, Dean, would be diagnosed with leukemia at 9 years old. And I know the statistics. 1 in 5 kids with childhood cancer will die from it. That's 20%, and that's too much. So our hearts sank. 3 days later, our hearts broke all together when we found out our own child no longer had a heartbeat. And as you can imagine, we were devastated. We were crushed. It stripped every ounce of joy out of our hearts that holiday season. And Christmas has always been our favorite time of the year, but it ruined it. It wrecked it. It distracted us from everything good about Christmas that we know and love. Who it's for, what it's about, who we were with. As I just read in that verse, we were absolutely being devoured by the enemy. We were being eaten alive. We were hurting. I will tell you this, and if you've got a pen, I hope you write this down. But if the enemy can distract you, he can and he will devour you. He wants to ruin our lives. He wants to take our families. He wants to distract you so he can pick us off one by one. But let me tell you something. The beautiful thing I love about the Word of God, this book right here, is that many of you can probably attest to this, is you can read a verse in this book one day and 2 days later come back to it and get something completely different out of it. After a few days went by, I went back and I read that same verse. That verse had just ripped my heart out a few days before. And I was reminded of something. A high school English lesson on similes and metaphors. The simile says, when you are like something. And I looked back at that verse, And it says the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, which reminded me of something. He is not the lion. He is pretending. But I remember that there is one coming. Revelation 5:5 says, and one of the elders said to me, do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. Guys, that's what our God's going to do. That's what our God can do. At this point right now, I have seen color come back in Dean Turner's face. He is cancer-free, he is port-free, and he is playing middle school football right now. I have seen my wife be filled with utter joy and throw her head back in laughter. God's going to take our trash, and he's going to take our trials, and he's going to take our tragedies, and he's turning every last bit of it into triumph. That's what our God's going to do. He's a God so big that he can give and he can take away, and yet he never leaves. He's a God so big that he makes cancer momentary, he makes pain temporary, and with him we know death is not the end. So let me just say this. In your lives, you may suffer. In our lives, we have suffered. You can take us for an example. Just a few months back, Amanda and I lost our second child, and it was just as hard as the first. You may see us suffer, but you will not see us quit. You may see us cry, but you're also going to see us smile. You may see us grieve, but you're also going to see us rejoice, because I know that a better day is coming. It's promised to us, and we have a God that keeps his promises. Guys, I want to tell you, like I tell the middle schoolers all the time when they ask hard questions, our lives are like puzzles. God is trying to put together a masterpiece for our lives, but we only get to see it one piece at a time. And sometimes he takes those pieces away, and it hurts us to still be in that puzzle. And we don't understand it. We don't get it. But he's got the puzzle box, y'all. He knows how good it turns out. He knows we win. He knows the enemy gets defeated. He is trying to create a masterpiece for your life and for my life. God does not waste one single ounce of your pain as a Christian. He uses it. With that being said, I will not stand up here and say, God, how could you let this happen? God, why'd you take my friend? God, we had plans. We wanted to build houses together. We wanted our kids to play together. We wanted to coach Little League together. God, we had plans. I won't sit here and say, God, why did we not get to keep those two children? God, I had paint picked out for that little girl's room. I will not sit here and say that. God, this couldn't have been your plan. Guys, this was always the plan. He doesn't guarantee us an easy life, but he does promise to be with us. There will come a day when tomorrow is going to start without each and every one of us. So let me ask you, what then will you do when your tomorrow no longer exists? What kind of echo would your life have? Will it be like that day 10 years ago when I was back in that batter's box? When you get to look upon the maker of the universe, the person who knitted you in your mother's womb, will it be like that day in that batter's box? Will you be called out and have to turn and take the long, loneliest walk you've ever walked in your life, where the stairs only go one way? Or will he do like my friend did? Will he stand up and clap as though say, I have seen enough. Well done, thy good and faithful servant. What will it be for you? That's a question that you need to answer. Let me pray. Dear God,